Happy Sunday, YouTubers. Like, share, and subscribe. I don't know. So, what are we going to talk about today? Spiritual Sunday. I always have a lot of stuff going on in my mind. So, I'll tell you a story. Everything starts with a really good story, right? I was, yesterday, I was inside. I just kind of just took some time for myself and was just screwing off, just laying in bed most of the day doing my thing. And by about 3, 4 o'clock, I was like, all right, I need to get out, get some exercise, do something. Certain days you just don't feel like it's mandatory. If you feel like you need to rest, rest. I'm just going to let you guys just throw that one out there. Sometimes you have to cut people off that are just overly demanding and say, hey, look, whatever you got to do, you can figure it out, right? I need a break. But I was, if you're rest too much, right, you got to get out and get some exercise. So there's a local hill here. It's about a 1,200-foot climb. And I love that. It's one of my favorite hills to climb because it actually emulates like actually climbing a mountain because it's half of it's really steep. So it's most of the mountain climbers actually hit that hill specifically in this area to practice if they're going to practice mountain climbing. And 1,200 feet isn't any small thing, right? I mean, it takes a little while to get 1,200 feet. You can do it pretty quick if you're good, but it was 98 degrees yesterday. It was 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right in the heat of the day. I got up there around 4:30, I think, and I hadn't eaten anything. I had been resting, right? When you're resting, you're not ingesting anything because your body isn't metabolizing things. But I had drank a little bit of coffee earlier in the day. So all I did was slug some water, and then I just hit this hill. After getting about halfway, man, I knew I was just like, oh boy, this is a mistake. Because, you don't have no blood sugar, right? So you're breaking down places in the body that, need to move energy, and they're not using sugar to break it down. And this is going to move into a lot more sophisticated conversation after I get done with this. But never stopped. Take as much time as I needed to keep from stopping. I'd rest periodically and then keep going. And then once you get close to the top, it starts to kind of crown out. Where the climb isn't as steep. Got to the top, and lo and behold, there's somebody waiting at the top. One guy. It's 100 degrees outside. There is a light breeze coming up the hill. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so around 37, 38 degrees Celsius. My car said 105 when I got back down, but that's 40 degrees Celsius. So hot, anywhere from 37 to 40 degrees Celsius. I got to the top, and there's a guy up there getting ready to parasail because they do this every year. They, especially in the summertime, because there's so much heat lower in the valley, it'll come up this. The hill that I climbed is called the Horse Heavens. There's a long ridge line that runs all the way across, the Yakima Valley, where it's the kind of on one side of the Yakima River, side of the gorge. It comes up around anywhere from, 800 to 1,500 feet, and then it levels out in a solid plain that runs all the way down to the Columbia River. They call that the Horse Heavens because years ago when we first got here and there was just Native Americans here, there were thousands and thousands, maybe millions of wild horses that used to run that top area. So I got to the top of the Horse Heavens there, and there's a guy waiting there to parasail, and he's like, hey, would you like some water? I said, yes, I would like some water. And it occurred to me that, and I've said a lot of this on my channel, it's like we always get what we need, not necessarily what we want, right? When you kind of put yourself in a way where you start wanting more than you need, you're getting a little bit needy, right? But if you're always getting what you need, then plants get what they need. They might want more water at times. They might want less water, but and some plants die off, if they're not meant to keep prospering. Depends on the plant. Depends what they're doing for their environment, right? If it's just a weed, probably get that it just dies. Anyway, this has a deeper spiritual meaning around farming, but we can talk about that one later. So I realized, I was talking to this guy for a little while, and it's like I got what I needed, and I definitely needed water, and I didn't have any water with me. I had drank some water just before I went, but it took me a little while to get to the top, and then there was water waiting for me. Hadn't eaten anything, and then I noticed on the way down, I tried to feel my legs and everything, and everything felt pretty good. It wasn't like it, because when you're breaking down resistances in the body, instead of taking stuff from out there, you're actually kind of making the body a little bit more efficient, right? You're constantly eating all the time from your environment, just rah, 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 rah. Then your body's having to break that down, and you're adding kind of a lot of resistance in the body, right? Because the body can't function as well. I've noticed on my own spiritual journey that eating less is always better. I don't care whatever it is, eating less is better. Filling yourself with stuff is just not the answer to like effective eating. Which brings us into energy and structure. So many people, when you talk about community and business and relationships, so many people, most of our actions and what we do are unconsciously driven. But our unconscious mind, a lot of people say this, our unconscious mind is actually controlling everything around us. Now, when you look around you, everything is unconscious, right? I mean, this computer screen, these books back here, the shirt I'm wearing, you could say that it's unconscious at this level. Now, you could argue that at the subatomic level, at some point it becomes conscious awareness, but we can't measure that, right? I mean, it'd be almost impossible to measure that. Now, if something's unconscious, it's just basically absorbing whatever energy is coming at it, and then just totally, it's completely, you could say that it's a victim to its environment, right? If it's unconscious. But at the same time, it's being controlled actively from its environment. Now, question, did my unconscious mind make sure that there was water ready for me at the top of that hill? Because I didn't consciously say, hey, there needs to be somebody up there waiting for me with water. The unconscious mind is connected to everything because it's what we're not aware of. So basically every chakra on up, crown chakra on up, the things that we're not aware of are unconscious mind. Now, in order for your unconscious mind to make you more aware of things, it has to show itself every once in a while, because you're moving from unconsciousness to becoming more conscious, right? So you'll be given clues. You'll be given things. Look, your unconscious mind is controlling something, and it's letting you know that it is. But in whatever way it can, to help you realize that the unconscious mind is still, there's a higher order that you're not conscious of, right? I had this conversation with my dad earlier. It was just, can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? People say that all the time. My dad's close to 80 years old. I love my dad. And he was doing something this morning that he's been unconscious of for a long time. And it has a lot to do with how we communicate to each other. A lot of times, if you have a person who has low self-worth, or if they feel like it could be lower self-worth than somebody else, or feel like I have more self-worth than you, and so I'm not going to, both of those are bad. right? Because it breaks down the communication between two people. If you feel like you have more self-worth or less than, because then you're going to be either you're going to say you're not worthy to reach out and talk to somebody, or you're thinking it's not worth my time, right, to reach out and talk to somebody. Both of those will create negative consequences. That's something that you become more and more aware of, especially if you're just traveling forward in faith and you're not making a lot of money for yourself, right? Because you become more aware of the unconscious mind and how you're being driven. And sometimes you'll force yourself not to address unconscious behaviors that you should have addressed, that if you had addressed and became more aware and more conscious, that you could fix certain things in your life. Yeah. All of it has to do with communication in the body, how well you communicate your needs to other people, and encourage those people to communicate their needs to make a symbiotic relationship. Because if I ever say, my needs are not important, then they won't be. You will attract things in your life that will make sure that it's always sucking the life out of you. And people will be presented to you that will only provide for themselves, right? No interest in providing for you. You're just a thing to them, basically a vehicle to provide for their needs. Look at society. It's a hierarchical order of feeding off each other energetically. That's why that debt, and this is where we get into the unconscious mind, and forgiveness and the unconscious mind. That's where all this comes into play, and all this means something, and where this conversation is heading, and why spiritual law is the way it is, and why forgiveness is so powerful. Because forgiveness means that you're not being tied energetically to the past. If you're not being tied energetically to the past, and you're not worried energetically about what the future holds, then it really doesn't matter. How much the external makes no difference whatsoever. You're just focusing on becoming more conscious to see how much of your unconscious mind is controlling your environment. So like for instance, if I pick up a baseball, it's unconscious, and I throw it. Poof. Baseball has momentum, has momentous energy. It's moving forward. That's energy that I put into it. It's unconscious. It's unconscious that it's being controlled by a higher order, right? A more conscious energy. Now, what would happen if the baseball became to the same level of consciousness as me? It might fight back. Right? And then it actively can combat the conscious energy that I'm projecting or block it. Right? So how does that tie into when it comes to being tied energetically to the past or the future when it comes to money? Here we go again, right? Money. Debt. If you have a debt that's pulling you back, now money is just a symbol of this. Any kind of debt, let's say I had a negative conversation with somebody, and then I made it up in my mind, my unconscious mind said, look, I'm going to ignore this person from now on because this is how they are, which is not true. It was a temporary action of somebody. And it could be that you even a negative conversation that you thought was negative was actually positive in the long run, because maybe you brought something to light in that conversation that will make it a more conscious relationship down the road. As long as you don't think, A, negatively about yourself, or B, that you have some kind of superior position. Never assume that you're anything but equal with everything. That is one of the number one most important points of spirituality and spiritual law. You and I are equal. You and I are one, because the Father and I are one. The things that you're not aware of will dictate, will control your life until you are aware of them. And then you'll actively control it. So, now take that back to the Jesus story, the Messiah story. Somebody who could walk on water. There's no energetic momentum there. He's just floating. Somebody could walk on water and float on top of water. That's somebody that has come to a point of consciousness where not subject to the laws of the projected energy around them to a degree that they can actively control the image that you're seeing in front of you, because it's just an image. We're all creating this image. We don't realize that if we don't understand that we're creating this image, more of our unconscious mind is creating this image, and then we lose active control over it. If you've got eating disorders or anything like that, if I have an eating disorder, then my unconscious mind is taking over and creating a vessel that I don't like the looks of, because my unconscious mind is controlling more of that action. Whereas if I'm consciously focusing on what I put in my body, I have more active control. But there's still always a level of unconsciousness, right? What happens when you become fully aware? The Messiah story is an example of somebody that became fully aware. Now, how do you get there? That's the question. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father or your higher self but by me, or this way. Basically creating an example of how to connect to your higher self, how you expand your consciousness to become fully aware, at least in this three-dimensional space. You can argue that the ascension process is infinite until you go all the way back to source, where source, the highest chakra, obviously contains all chakras within it, and so that's the father, mother, the structure, field that contains everything. Unknowingly, the cycles that we go through, and this is happening on a macro scale, will make the population more conscious without it even know it's being forced to become more conscious, right? At first, there's a stress. Like, there's a lack in the external environment, until you understand that your higher self is creating that. And it's the part of you that's unconscious is actually creating that for you to make you more conscious of what you're doing to yourself and what other people are doing to themselves. Right? Yeah. I don't know how much more I can say about that, other than there is a reason why people say ask and you shall receive, and then how that goes both ways, and why always just be open to receive. Don't ever force debt slavery on somebody because they ask for something from you. That's up to them, right? Let's say somebody asks me to do something and they're multimillionaire. I'm just going to say, yeah, of course I'll do that for you. Now, it's up to them, between them and them higher selves, and for them to, maybe you're brought into their life so they can become more conscious. Because if they ask you to do something and don't give you anything in return, and just abuse the relationship, and you're not conscious, like if you're not conscious enough to say, hey, look, I would love to do that for you, but you're in a position where you can help me out here, here, and here. I would appreciate it if you can do that, and I will do whatever you like. You have to be able to say that, or the communication will break down. You will feel used, and the person asking you will feel empowered over you, as though they have more power. And sometimes it'll be an unconscious action because you're trying to create a difference or potential in your environment and judge what you are compared to somebody else. That's why judgment is so bad. Judgment of the mind is the worst thing you can do, because don't judge, right? You're never looking at it from a higher perspective if you're ever judging yourself or anybody else. Control your energy. Just block the things and be open and honest, with people. And don't be afraid to reach out to people that you haven't talked to in a while, especially if you assume that they don't want to talk to you, or if you assume that they don't want to talk to you. Assuming either will decrease communication. Don't be afraid to check on somebody that maybe you even had a bad conversation with a long time ago and you care about. I care about everybody, even it doesn't matter how bad the conversation is. I've never met anybody that I don't love implicitly. That's why unconditional love is so important, because it releases debts, cancels out any negative thing in the past, and sets everything at zero every time you talk to anybody. If you can just unconditionally love someone, regardless of how they're acting, most of the time you can get to the grounded state and get them grounded so that you can have a really good conversation, a really good time with them. I hope this message was semi-beneficial for you and me, because if I don't give these messages, then you are a part of the body, and then I would be, in a way, not doing my job for the rest of the body. Especially if I feel like I have something to give you that could help in any way, right? Because all of us are at different states of awareness. Doesn't matter who you're talking about. And so value everybody's state of awareness, no matter where they're at. So let's get an oracle card. Why not, right? It's Sunday. What do the oracle cards have to say? Free spirit. Yeah. I think that's says it right. I mean, the conversation I just had with you is about being a free spirit, trying to unlock. If you want to be free and be a free spirit. I mean, my ideal life has been Peter Pan, right? To unlock the powers of the mind so that we can just do what we want in this three-dimensional space without being confined and pulled down like it feels like we need to, pull from each other unnecessarily. So, love you guys. Have a beautiful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.